Well, hi folks, June 18th, 1995, Island Highway in Campbell River. Sort of a semi-overcast day, really humid and hot. Inside here it's tropical. But it's better than freezing rain, so to speak. I trust everyone is fine. Have a couple quick questions for you today. Before the questions, I'm going to just sort of mention, I'm going to put some links at the end of this. I put them on before and suggested people sort of explore them, and most people haven't, and I guess that's all right. But if you want to get the context of where I'm coming from, if you haven't read Beyond Without Conscience, or you haven't downloaded the 3 UN reports and read those, you don't really have that context. You can sort of listen to somebody's Cole's notes on it, but get your own Cole's and do your own thinking. I'm going to add another one. It's called Snakes in Suits. But the questions are, will 2020 be remembered as the year of the virus scam that led to the Pancake Revolution? Or the Pancake Revolution that included the virus scam? What came first, the vaccine or the virus? What came first, the virus or the vaccine? I see the second wave is being pumped. They're trying to get air into it, trying to give it legs, trying to get us to get all ready for whatever else they're going to dictate. And in saying this, get me wrong. I mean, the virus has caused a lot of damage to a lot of families and a lot of people. You know, a lot of elderly people have died. The people we should have looked after, this is the craziness of it all. We sort of fell really flat. Nobody's getting sued or charged for that. Well, I guess some private homes in Quebec are being sued, but nobody's really being held accountable. The bureaucrats are supposed to be in charge of overseeing. Nobody's holding their feet to the fire in this thing. So, like I say, it has been dangerous for a segment of the population, but for most of us, all it has been is stay at home and stay in your room sort of thing. You're grounded. Close your business, you're grounded. The ramifications of that are going to be long, long term. And of course, a lot of people don't get that either, but just imagine if you're thinking, you realize that. It's, what do we do first? Mrs. Aunt Jemima. I was thinking this morning, what if we put Aunt Jenny on there, and Aunt Jenny's white, but people shit their pants and really start spinning in circles, saying, hey, that's racist, that's white privilege. I mean, I think most people who picked up a bag of that mix, pancake mix, me included, racism was the farthest thing from my mind. Looking at that picture, you thought, this lady must have had something. Was this her recipe? Blah, blah, blah. Because as a kid, you loved those pancakes. And when you added Aunt Jemima syrup to it, yeah, it was pretty cool. And yet we have some people sitting in the corner picking their nose saying, no, that's totally racist. And of course we have to go on to other things and other things. So I ask you, who is really behind all this pulling down culture and bringing the average person and the follower in the street all around down? Who is behind all that? Who's pumping these bleeding hearts to go do their thing? Well, in Canada, you just have to look at our governments. Our government in Ottawa, for sure. We have Prime Minister of the minority of the Liberals. They're running a minority government with the backing up of the other left-wing party, the NDP, led by Mr. Singh. And of course, the Quebec party sort of steps in now and again to add extra votes. So it's a real conglomerate of, I call stupidity, really. But the Prime Minister and Mr. Singh, what is their buzzword every time they get a chance? The Prime Minister comes out of his bedroom, down the steps, and speaks in front of his house. It's too scary to go to work. but he stays at home. And he tells us that we're suffering from systemic racism and white privilege. And you sort of wonder what the hell is he talking about? And Mr. Singh regurgitates the same lines. And I'm running into a lot of bleeding hearts are doing the same. They're taking responsibility for all this white privilege and the systemic racism. And when I ask people, what do you mean by systemic? They go into a dither and they start stumbling around and start accusing me of trying to sort of derail the real issue. If you don't know what systemic is, do you think it might be a good idea to check it out? Check out the meaning of the word. So anyway, Singh was in Parliament, got kicked out of Parliament yesterday for the day. He was trying to get a proposal through agreeing that the RCMP suffer from systemic racism and we should really look at it and change things up. And he wanted, everybody had to vote yes or it wouldn't go through. It was one of those unanimous things. And they all thought they had it unanimous, so they're all excited, but all of a sudden the bloc says, leader of the bloc says no. And so Singh sort of lost it, shit his pants and started spinning in circles, in French called him a racist. Well, they called him on it. And that's against parliamentary procedure, practice. You're not allowed to sort of make those kind of accusations. And so pushing the shove, it went back and forth in French for a while, and then the Speaker of the House in English came in and said, no, you have to apologize. And in English, Mr. Singh said, no, I'm not going to apologize for calling for what I said because he is a racist. And they said, well, Mr. Singh, you're going to have to leave. So he left. First Canadian leader of a political party who's been thrown out of the House of Commons for calling a member a racist. And he didn't repeat racist on the steps when he was outside or at the podium, but didn't withdraw any remarks as he stood by his comments. And I'm thinking, and he started crying, or holding back tears. And I'm not sure if these are crocodile tears or whatever. Remember, this guy's a trained lawyer. So lawyers, like Trudeau, is a trained drama teacher. This guy's a trained lawyer, and they're trained to be actors to a point. And I'm thinking, Mr. Singh, use your logical legal side and think about it. You were elected as leader of the new Democratic Party of Canada by people from all races. You were elected to a seat in the House of Commons, a seat in Parliament, by people from all races. What the hell are you talking about racism? If there was systemic racism, like you're saying there is, you wouldn't be here. You wouldn't be the leader, you wouldn't be sitting in Parliament. And of course, that's the picture we have here in Canada. We have our Prime Minister coming out, apologizing for systemic racism, the white privilege. We have Mr. Singh coming out, and as he comes out, he's sort of holding back tears. He's trying not to, he's done this a couple of times, crying about the thing, all the people being suppressed, sort of thing. Now the question is, do we have racism in Canada? Of course, there's racism in every part of the world. Is it systemic in Canada? No. Are the RCMP, do they have a racist in there? Yeah, probably a few. Is it a systemic racist organization? I would say no. It's, I mean, these are the buzzwords. And who starts this kind of shit? Who starts stirring this up? And for what reason? I think in Canada, all we're doing is going into debt. There's no real leadership. So this is, just throw this out there, where we have some bleeding hearts, we'll pick it up. And we can have a buzzwords, get everybody's mind off what's really happening. And what's really happening is a lot of people have been grounded, told to stay at home. A lot of businesses have been shut down. The threat of fines, and of course, big fines for those who defied that and tried to open up. And protest marching and that was all okay. Even our politicians took part in it. So I think, we have a big, big bill to pay. And we're in for a whole lot of hurt, and a lot of people aren't thinking of that. They're thinking that these two clowns in Ottawa are going to solve it all. But, I mean, they don't even know how much money they spent. I mean, if they do, they're not coming up and telling us. This isn't a private organization, folks. This is a democratic country. We should know. But he says he can't. Maybe next week he'll come with some numbers. It's just totally unacceptable. The guy's a clown. And we have sent in the clowns. We already have them in the Prime Minister's residence. But that's that portion of it. The other portion of this is why are we reached a point where we're tearing apart cultures? And it's not just here, it's happening all around. I mean, you look at England, and it's sort of a mess there too. Throwing statues, pulling them down, throwing them into the chuck. Why? Who's behind all this sort of thing? Taking movies off, pulling books out of libraries, taking down statues and monuments, covering them up. Who's behind all this? You know, the bleeding hearts who say that Churchill was a racist and he shouldn't be there. If it weren't for Churchill, think about this, if it weren't for Churchill, the kind of world might be a different place today. And all these people bitching and complaining probably would be gone the way of a lot of other people that the Nazis didn't agree with. Think about that. I mean, this man has a place in history. He should have that monument there. Whether he was maybe a bit racist, I don't know. I never knew the man. I didn't know that he was a good artist. He actually did some nice painting as well. But whatever, he sort of led the Western world and held on until the US got involved and were able to solve that problem. And when you analyze that problem too, it's much like today. This was war without conscience. Snakes in suits comes in. United Nations documents come in. The same bankers are financing both sides. Think about that. Think about that for a minute. It's interesting because I remember I worked in the company and I was sitting down with the division manager and the manager, and they were getting ready to put me in as a manager as well. And we're having this conversation, and they got off topic and doing some reminiscing about when they were in Italy in the tank corps. And they took out a German tank, and as they were looking at it, they were surprised that it had the same parts. It had the same seals, the same stamps as the tanks they were in. And they thought, wow, there's something funny going on here. Crazy. And something funny is going on today, folks, as well. And although a lot of us don't want to believe that. And what companies are behind, because they're pulling these movies, pulling these songs, pulling these books, pulling statues, and what have you? Who is sort of supporting them? Are there some countries involved in companies that are doing that? Is this sort of a soft war going on? We're not on a battlefield in tanks, but there's something funny going on. You can do some research and find out pretty quickly what countries are involved in Hollywood today. Why would you tear down the culture? I mean, it's not what we want. Some of those monuments, what they stood for then, we don't stand for today, but it's part of history. And we're supposed to be learning from that. Aren't we? Sort of crazy. Another question I have is, does Quaker Oats really give a damn about the average person in the street? Or are they pulling this because they figure they can get some more marketing traction? If they pull Aunt Jemima now, they'll get some controversy, get some traction, maybe attract a few more buyers, shoppers, and get that bottom line and revenue going. Does Starbucks give a rat's ass about Black Lives Matter? It looks like a good place now. We can come on board here. We've got to shut so many hundred stores. We want to make sure we keep our base. Maybe we can increase that if we sort of get on with this this label today that nobody knows what it really means. It's all been hijacked and taken away by craziness. And that's a good question to think about. Do these big corporations really give a rat's ass about people? And as you read, without conscience, as you read these UN documents, it sort of becomes a little bit clearer. Another question I have when I'm looking at the States, where a lot of the lower educational results and more of the poverty exists, it's in democratic-run states. Why is that? Why is that? Are people being used as tools, being played as fools, used as tools just for somebody's other agenda? We don't think about that because we get all wrapped up in the emotion of things. We all get wrapped up in whatever everybody's doing. It's easy to do that. And I don't know. We're at a funny place right now, a real funny place. But I think we have to start thinking for ourselves. You know, let politicians give you the buzzwords. Forget news. I mean, as you look at the corporations that are sort of doing their thing, trying to squeeze a couple more dollars out of you, who owns all of the broadcast companies? Think about that. Is there a reason why they all have a similar script? Is there a reason that you could be right on site and the news you're reading is you must have been at a different site sort of thing because they're not making sense? What we see is not what we see. You know, what we think we see is just not what's all that's there. So anyway, enjoy the Wuhan waltz. And somebody called me on that and said, why are you calling this a Wuhan waltz? That's racist. And of course that racist thing is big today. And I said, what do you mean racist? I said, what's the definition of a waltz? Well, he said, it's a dance. So if you're looking at a Strauss waltz, do you have just one guy on a guitar? Or one guy on a flute? He said, no. I said, you have a whole orchestra, right? Yeah, you have an orchestra. I said, well, what's this virus? They had players, they had musicians, Winnipeg, Fort Eric, this US, England, Australia, Israel, Russia, everybody's playing with these viruses. They happened to come together at Wuhan. And Canadians were working with scientists from there. The States were funding scientists from there. Harvard was, the guy from Harvard, the head of Harvard he was actually trying to do the dance before the composition was finished. So what happened in Wuhan, this all came together. The virus got out. The Chinese now admit it didn't come from the wet lab. And the dance started in Wuhan. So do not think it's fitting to call it a Wuhan waltz. It's nothing to do with the Chinese people. They didn't all get together, the billions of them, to create this. Like us, they're twits we call politicians and leaders did. I mean, they're all intertwined in this, a lot of countries. So I call it the Wuhan waltz. That's what the orchestra finally came together and everything came into place on this negative side. So now you know the rest of my Wuhan waltz story. Take care. Bye for now. See you tomorrow.